Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for hanging with me on this Saturday. And if you went out of your way to like, comment, or subscribe, thank you. All right, so we're gonna do popper versus walking bait. And I think it's very important to understand why each one works the way they do and the type of areas you're gonna throw them in and basically the forage you are imitating. Because if you try to go to a gizzard shad type area where there's maybe a bunch of gizzard shad are about to spawn and they're in a shell bed and they're swimming around, you're seeing them, they're all this size. That's not typically a place where a bunch of bass are gonna hang out. 2-pound bass can't eat a gizzard shad that big, or they're at least not targeted. There's a lot easier meals for a bass that's this size. They're gonna be on bluegill beds. They're gonna be around threadfin shad. So when you're targeting numbers of fish, the gizzard shad place isn't necessarily your best bet. Now, if you need 1 5-pounder, go to where the gizzard shad are at. But if you need to catch a limit or you want to have a fun day of catching a bunch of bass, it makes more sense to go to where there's brim spawning or you see threadfin, maybe they're in balls. But it's very important to choose the right bait as well. So when I think of a popper, this is most of the time for me imitating a bluegill. I just think that pop noise it makes is very similar to what a bluegill does. You can also imitate shad with this as well, but most of the time for me, this is a bluegill imitator. Now, if I'm around bluegill beds, if I'm not throwing a prop bait, it's gonna be a popper. And in colors, most of them are gonna be bluegill colors. If you have a real cloudy day, just straight white is gonna show up the best for the best to eat it. Now, this is going to be like worm fishing for me, where you have bluegill spawning. Maybe they're in like a 20-yard stretch. You know where the bluegill beds end on each side, and you just keep that popper honest in that area. And it's almost the same as worm fishing, where you throw it out and you're gonna fish really slow. You pop it and you let it sit there. You let the bubbles and the rings go away, and then you pop it again and you let it sit there. And as soon as a big bass or a small bass or whatever swims into that area, they're coming and going, ambushing their prey, like predators do rather, and they're gonna eat the popper. Now, if you are in that area with a big walking bait, or a big style plopper bait that is imitating a big gizzard shad, you're probably not gonna get as many bites. This is going to be for your gizzard shad places, for your places where you just have big gizzard shad that are in distress. Same with a big topwater walking bait. You're not necessarily going to get the bites like you should. And that's why a popper is such a better bait when it comes to numbers. Now, what I really do like though is these smaller walking baits. They still have that kick that imitates a distressed gizzard shad, but you can throw these in other areas. So I think an opportunistic feeding bass, even though it's biting bluegill, it'll still bite a smaller walking bait. Now, again, those 2-pound bass, they're probably not gonna bite a big topwater, they're not gonna bite a big plopper. And when you have a small area, it sometimes makes more sense to just fish something subtle. You don't want to scare bass away. You don't wanna put bass on high alert. Same thing with the worm. You're just in there, you can take a small area and milk it for everything it's worth. That's what you can do with a popper. You start bringing in blades and loud noises and loud rattles, you're gonna put the fish on high alert, and that's not what you want to do. So small prop bait, poppers, great for fishing around the brim bed. And then if you need to mix in a smaller topwater like the head and bow, this is a good in-between. And then if you are fishing for one big bite and you're just running gizzard shad places, that's when you're gonna go with your big walking baits and your big plopper style baits that are pretty much only imitating gizzard shad. So try that, guys. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.